This is not mine, but my dad's story. It all happened in Nigeria when he was a young adult, before he got married to my sweet mom. He had this very good friend. They met in school and hit it off. This friend, we will call him John. John's mom had a little store where she sold drinks, food, candy, and other groceries. So John was like this cool kid back then, if you know what I mean. Once you have him as a friend, that means free food, free drinks. But that's if you became John's friend. So well, he became good friends with my dad, and they always met in the shop. God knows what mischief they embarked on, being young adults and knowing my dad a lot. John's mom, sister, and younger brother knew my dad, as they had gotten that close. Then fast forward to a couple of years later, they have both gone their separate ways, trying to find their footing, being grown men. They hadn't heard from each other in years. So that fateful morning, when Dad went out and to his surprise saw John at the bus station, they talked and laughed like old times, and then, according to Dad, John became sad at a point and said my dad never called on him and his family, that he should have at least gone to shake on his mom and sister, because at least during that time, John's sister had a crush on Dad then. Dad felt bad and agreed to say hi to them at the shop once he gets to see them. The bus came, and then they said their bye, and then he hopped on and went on his way. A week later, he decides to go visit the shop, hoping to find John's mom, the sister, or even John himself. He even bought some gifts, to apologize. So he got there and saw the mom, greeted her and apologized for not coming by to say hi after all these years, and she told him it was fine. He then proceeded to tell her that he even met John, her son, sometime last week, and they had a good talk and asked her where he was. This was when the mother looked shocked and white, as if she was suffering a stroke. Confused, Dad asked what was wrong, and then the woman finally came to life. She said John had been dead months ago. She broke down weeping. Dad was even more confused because he had talked to John just last week. Long story short, John really was dead. He had died in an accident, and Dad almost fainted when he saw it was true. The experience saddens him and makes him laugh too. He laughed at how foolish he must have looked with his gifts after having learnt what happened. However, he was glad his friend chose to somehow say his final goodbye to him. When my mom was in Kenya and my dad was still alive, one day he had to go on this work project. That night, my mom had this horrid nightmare. She said, "I dreamt I was in a Land Rover and it was night time. There was me and about 3 other people and the driver. Suddenly there was a massive thump and the driver turned around to us and said, 'Oh my God, we've just hit something.' As the dream went on, she found out that it was a boy who was running along the road and ran sideways into the car. My mom was so upset, and the dream was so vivid that she told my dad about it when he got back. He apparently took a step back and with a horrified face said, 'Oh my God, how did you know that?' The weird thing was, when he had been in a village somewhere in Kenya, a man's son had run off while he was walking at night time and had run into a big vehicle. He was killed instantly. My dad thought my mom was a witch for a long time after that. On another day, my mom was sleeping in a hotel. That night, she felt her feet being tickled. She thought it was me and my sisters, so she looked down to her feet smiling. And that was when she could see a long white arm stretching down from the windows and touching her feet. And when she kicked at them, they were snickering at her. She woke up relieved it was a dream. However, when she woke up, she found out that the rumor had it that this place was haunted, and she wasn't the first that have had such paranormal experiences. When she left, she saw the builders were placing glasses in the window holes. She thought it was strange for ghosts to pass through glass, as ghosts cannot pass through glass. These are only some of the weird stuffs and unexplained mysteries that has happened to me, my mom, and my sisters. This particular event took place when I was in a tour in Africa. To be specific, it was within the country of Kenya. I was in a tour with my parents. We were in the Masai Mara National Park, which is one of the most famous savannas of Africa. We had lodged in a hotel in the savannah. And to better understand the events that took place in this particular savannah, or at least in that particular hotel, I feel you should understand the layout of this hotel. The layout of the hotel was as follows. The main building was at a distance of at least 1 kilometer from the lodging cabins. The cabins were amazing. They had a feel as if they belonged to the jungle itself. There was a river flowing behind the cabin, but it was out of bounds as it has crocodiles within it. But we got a good view of the river from the balcony of our cabin. It was great seeing crocs in their own habitat. The night we reached the hotel, we were all exhausted. The room was so cozy, except for one weird thing. It had a deer's head hanging from one of its walls. The hotel was pretty old, so it must have been placed there before hunting was banned in Kenya. There was a tribal show of the Mara people that night, which wouldn't take place for another month, as we were there for only 3 days. My parents went to the show, so I decided to stay back as I was tired, and the hotel was about 1 kilometer away. I was reading a book but must have fallen asleep at some point. I woke up about an hour later, which was pretty odd as I never wake up at night once I sleep. My parents were not yet back, and as I rubbed my eyes, I swear I saw the deer's eyes move. I was completely freaked out and closed my eyes. After some time, I gave it up for an illusion and started to read again. This was when I noticed something odd. The curtains of the room were moving as if there was a breeze coming from the windows, but the windows were closed. Suddenly, I felt a shiver run down my spine. I felt as if I was being washed. I felt a weird cold sensation and started praying. After a while, the feeling stopped. I kept a pendant of OM we had brought with me and tried to sleep. After some time, my parents returned. I didn't tell them about the experience as I thought they would not believe me. The next day, I asked our guide, who had become a pretty good friend by then, about the experience. I thought he would know as he visited that place frequently. He said that he didn't know anything about that, but I felt from his tone that he was hiding something from me. We went on a drive in the savannas and came back that evening in a light mood. But when we reached our cabin, we found to our astonishment that our luggage had been scattered and messed up. In anger, we thought that the cleaner must have done it and went to complain to the hotel management. But they said that as per their policy, the cleaners do not touch anything belonging to a customer. The receptionist also said that the cleaning was done under supervision. So we had to let go of the incident as some sort of misunderstanding. Then, the last and the most eerie thing occurred. We were about to go to bed when we all heard someone knocking forcefully at the door. When we opened the door, there was no one. This happened 2 to 3 times. Finally fed up, we shouted to the person who was knocking to stop playing around. However, there was no answer. The knocking stopped. We gave it up as some sort of prank and then retired to bed. But it must have been around 2 to 2:30 in the morning when I again heard the knocking, as I was sleeping on an extra bed near the door, so I think I was the one who heard it. I was scared to go out alone after my first experience, and we were even advised not to go out alone at night as the area had many wild animals. So I woke my parents and told them about the knocking. At first, they told me that I was just getting paranoid and that I should go to sleep. But then, we all heard knocks on the door. My dad opened the door only to find that there was no one there. But he saw something move in the bushes. He came in and declared that it was some kid, though I didn't feel convinced. I decided that I would rather believe that it was a kid. Next day, we complained about this to the staff. We also said that it must have been some prankster. But then suddenly, my dad asked what moron would have let out a kid at 2 a.m. in the morning. That got me thinking. I started relating this to my previous experience and felt that the place was haunted. But anyways, we were to depart that day, so I didn't care much. After those series of events, I didn't think about the incident until the day we were about to leave Kenya. On the day of our departure, our guide told me he wanted to tell me something. He asked me not to tell anyone what he was going to tell me, and so I agreed. And that was when he started to tell me about that hotel. He said that it was rumored that a leopard at the hotel killed a boy of about 9 to 10 years old some 50 years or so ago. He also told me that everyone said that the ghost of the boy still haunted the same room where he was staying the night he died. He said that many of his customers had the same complaints as me, but only those customers who stayed in 2 specific rooms had the experience. It was in room 153 and 154. And guess which room I've stayed? I had stayed in room 154. My partner and I used to live with his daddy and 5 other siblings at Adbara Street, Eindhoven, which is in Cape Town, South Africa. Now, this is a RDP house, a house under the Reconstruction and Development Program, which has only 1 room, bathroom, and lounge. They built on an extra 3 rooms, so the 2 younger siblings slept with daddy in the main room. My partner and I had our own room. His middle brother was sleeping in the lounge, and the other 2 sisters were in their room. So from the front door, you come into the lounge, and next to that was the main room and bathroom. And then you walk into another entrance, and that's where you will see our room and then our sister's room. It was just after midnight, and my boyfriend and I had just gotten into bed from watching a movie on the phone. Half an hour later, I got up and went to the bathroom. There's a window above behind the toilet, so I just did my business. It was when I stood up that I noticed that the whole bathroom had turned ice cold and extremely evil. I felt this evil presence and his arm coming towards me. I was frozen for like 5 minutes. It felt as if it was going to pull me out of the window from behind. I felt this thing grab me for a second. It wiggled my finger, and that's when I jumped out from the bathroom and ran into our bedroom again and jumped into my partner's arms. He asked me why I was shaking so much, and just as I was about to tell him, the actual television in our lounge switched on all by itself. After that night, I had a lot more weird experiences in that house. I eventually moved out. Then after a while, my partner moved in with me at my mom's house. He told my mom about it, and she freaked out too. We would do our research and inquiry about the house, and that was when we found out something creepy. It would turn out that their house was built on an army base that has a morgue attached to it. I live in Egypt. It was a cold night in November, so I stayed up late studying for my exams. I was only 16 and I made my own private room on the balcony of our home on the 5th floor. In front of us, there were 2 buildings and a famous hotel with a swimming pool just on its 4th floor, where parties are held every night and people there keep dancing, screaming and laughing until dawn, which I was used to anyways. But that night at about 4 a.m., I heard a different scream. It started with a noise. I noticed that all the lights of the 3rd floor apartment were turned on and off so fast, which was at one of the buildings in front of my room. and shadows of people were moving so fast. From my room view, I could see most of their rooms. So I guess that maybe there was some kind of domestic disturbance or something there. So I went back to study. Then I kept hearing a woman scream. I told myself, damn, these hotel parties, it never ends. But then I suddenly remembered that I saw it finish an hour earlier. And that was when I heard it. Another scream.
Help! Anyone call the police, please!
I didn't know what to do then. I was confused and couldn't think straight, so I just stood there. 2 minutes after, I felt a big shiver when I heard again this woman scream with a huge pain.
My son!
This in a way made my heart stop. Everything stopped after that. Just silence. No more screaming. No noise. It was later that I knew that she and her husband found their only 3-year-old son choked to death and wrapped on his own blanket and dropped behind the living room sofa. 15 minutes later, the police were all over our street, closing it until 7 a.m. when they began investigating everyone. All they knew was that a thief broke in while they were sleeping, and during the robbery, the little kid woke up, saw the thieves and screamed. The thief held his breath and wrapped him tight in his blanket, then went to the parents' bedroom where they were already awake after hearing sounds and threatened them to give him all the precious things and valuables they had, including their personal mobile phones, or he would kill their child. After giving him all he asked for, they kept asking him where their kid was, but the man just ran away quickly. No one could catch or identify him, so they had to spread his description photos and stuff. The night after, while I was studying late as usual, I suddenly saw a fire on the floor just close to my feet, like a small flame coming out of nowhere. I cried for help and quickly spilled my big bottle of water on it, but it didn't go out. It just kept flaming for 2 minutes, and then all of a sudden, it vanished, just like that. The weirdest thing was that it didn't leave any burning effects after it. The curtains were just too close to it, and the carpet also. The curtains and the carpets that were so close to the fire didn't even get darker from its smoke. This strange flame kept appearing in my room every night at 4 a.m. for 2 minutes and vanishing itself with no harm to me or any of my things. Even I didn't feel its heat at all. I felt like it was a sort of a reproach for me that I didn't do anything to rescue him. By him, I meant the little boy. I was so sad that I kept waiting for this flame every night for the whole week and didn't tell anyone and didn't even try to put it out. After a week, suddenly the flame stopped appearing. I knew later that the police caught the killer by tracing the phones he took from the parents. The parents moved away after the accident and I moved my room from the balcony. For a whole 12 years after, no one could stay at this apartment where he died. Every morning, I look at it and see how abandoned, dark, and sad the apartment appears. I wonder just what if. Sometimes, I hear her scream again late at night. Sometimes, I see lights on and off again. But I know it's just in my head. Right?